Greetings. By virtue of your presence watching this video today, I want you to know that we consider you to be an extended member of our family at Unity in Lynnwood. We believe that you are an individualized expression of that one creative impetus which stands behind all life, and as such we celebrate the uniqueness which you are, and we celebrate our unity with you. We are glad you're with us.
I'm nearly overwhelmed with how much I enjoy coming to see you every week. Good morning, and good morning, and good morning. I delight in your company. Thank you for being here. On February 25th, following the second service, we'll start about 12:30 in the afternoon. We will participate in an international simulcast of a movie called White Like Me as part of our 64-day program, Season for Nonviolence, 64 Ways in 64 Days. Following the movie, which is approximately 100 minutes long, we will have an in-house conversation. The in-house conversation will be followed with an international conversation that will happen via the magic of the internet. I'm not sure how all of that works. Thank God for Cameron. And our community has been invited to be a voice in that international conversation. So we invite you to invite friends who might have a heart for this important conversation to join us on that day, February 25th, 12:30 in the afternoon. This is your last Sunday to purchase tickets for a Valentine's Day to remember. You know, I still have the wrong one.
Very well practiced.
It's just like we rehearsed it. This is your last Sunday to purchase tickets for Chocolate Cabaret. It's a decadent evening of handmade chocolate delicacies. One was delivered to my office even this morning for review. Delicious wines and songs of love and lust and longing. And personally, I have to believe that
like a river flows surely to the sea, darling, so it goes. Some things are meant to be.
This Wednesday, 7 o'clock, your $25 ticket benefits the General Operating Fund of Unity in Lynnwood. It is available through the gift shop, so please
take my hand, take my whole life too, for I can't help falling in love with you.
Oh, so true, so true. She walked into my office. I suspect it has now been 5 years, actually, as I considered that between services. We had a conversation about the nature of life, the reality of this thing we call God, the purpose of all of it. I don't know how many hours was it 3 hours? Wow. And I was working. Well, there we go, full disclosure. She remains one of the deepest wells in my world. She's a spiritual partner, a courageous fellow seeker. She's deeply committed to you, and I'm really honored to do this with her and offering her first full Sunday morning lesson that I didn't write. You understand, I was sick one Sunday. Will you join me in welcoming your associate minister? Her name is Reverend Nina Clark.
Wow. Wow. I should turn around more often, I guess. So last Tuesday, UIL's adult ed program in the class World Religions, over 20 people joined together to sit at the feet of Rabbi Ted and learn about Judaism. And it was a marvelous class, great conversations. And I invite you to join us again this Tuesday for those of you who were not able to come to the first class or would like to join in. We'll be exploring Hinduism together on this upcoming Tuesday. And then on Saturday the 24th, we're having a service connection meeting. And it's for people who are in service, people who are not in service, people who are thinking about service, maybe would like to be in service, not sure you want to be in service. Anyway, we're going to be exploring, we're going to have some fun. Michelle Focus is going to lead us, and we're also going to have some fun exploring the idea of excellence in service to our community. So I welcome all of you. One winter evening during my sophomore year in college, I found myself gazing at the stars with a couple of friends. I don't exactly remember why this was so, but I suspect that it had something to do with an extra large, extra cheese pizza delivered just after midnight from the local Domino's. At any rate, on this particular night, we were gazing up at the stars, admiring how bright and how many, when one of us, and I've long forgotten who, said, "I wonder what's beyond our galaxy." And being the astute science majors that we were, one of us responded with the profound answer, "The universe." The next question followed quickly on the heels of that answer. And what's beyond that? Our collective brilliant answer, more universe. And beyond that, even more universe. Now, I had spent many a night prior to this time staring at the heavens, and so I really don't know what made this time any different. But I found that as my friend's conversation turned to other things, I was still out in space in my imagination, seeing a sort of bubble delineating the edge of the galaxy, and then peering through it to see what lay beyond. There wasn't nothing, I realized. Even if it was empty, there wasn't nothing. It couldn't be nothing. There was more. In my imagination, I kept traveling farther and farther out. And whenever I got to a perceived edge, there was always more on the other side. The universe became never-ending. My mind was blown, as we said back then, and I felt both enormously expanded and infinitesimally insignificant. That was my first real taste of the nature of infinite, at least in the physical realm. And while my ego would like to say that my whole life was radically different from that point forward, it wasn't. I would think about it from time to time, and the imagery of it stuck with me, the never-endingness of it. But while I experienced an awestruck sense of this infinite universe, what I did not experience was being part of it. It was definitely infinite and me. It was out there, grand and beyond my ability to comprehend, and I was here looking out at it. And this was the who that I brought to New Thought. Intellectually, emotionally, and something more in the core of myself resonated with all of the talk about one infinite something. I just didn't see myself as part of it, nor did I even know that I didn't see myself as part of it. Lost my place, sorry. I've been in New Thought now for about 23 years, and I've come to the conclusion that for me, the work of getting that knowing of infinite and oneness in the marrow of my bones is the most important work that I'll ever do. So today I'd like to share with you why I feel it's so important to deeply understand what Unity's first principle is all about, and why I feel it's so fundamentally foundational. I had to come at this understanding from a backdoor sort of way, and I offer it to you in case that it may serve your own growth and understanding. As those of you who have been in Unity for a while well know, and for those of you who may be new or newer, Unity's first principle, in fact, most of New Thought holds the first principle to be God is all, or God is all there is. God is infinite, or said another way, God is one. Ellen Davenport, in her book, The Five Principle, expands upon this by saying, Principle 1 affirms that God is all there is. God is omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresent. Not all-powerful, but all power. not all-knowing, but all-knowledge, and present everywhere. God is the stars, the rocks, the animals, the people. God is the love, the creativity, the wisdom. All that we are and have is God, and we can never be separate from that universal power. Michael Beckwith, founder of the New Thought community Agape International, says this principle of oneness is our basic rock-bottom foundational principle, that there is only one unified field. But do we really get how important it is to have more than just an intellectual or logical understanding of infinite? For me, there are two reasons why that is so important. The first is that through my readings of various New Thought teachers, both current and past, and through conversations with teachers and fellow students, and through my own practice, I've come to know that the efficacy of everything that we teach rests upon having that firm foundation of knowing that we cannot, no matter how hard we try, be separate from God. And second, for me, understanding infinite is the bedrock of knowing my oneness with all that is. And knowing my oneness completely influences how I walk in the world. Knowing my oneness dictates how I relate to my partner, my kids, to the checker at the store, to the planet, to animals, to each of you. And for me, both of those hinge on really getting infinite in my bones. But you may ask, why am I making such a big deal out of it? Seems simple, right? God is all there is, present everywhere. No spot where God is not. What else is there to know? And yet, now, this may just be me, but I don't think I'm so very different from most people in my journey into New Thought principles. I cut my New Thought teeth in a religious science church, as it was called way back then. My soul sang with the recognition of the truth of those teachings. They touched a deep place in me. They felt right. They felt true. I was inspired by every story I heard about other people's creating health and wealth and happiness in their lives, and I couldn't wait to put them into action and experience the same things. Yet, in spite of my most earnest prayers and reading and study, every time I closed my eyes and began, God is all there is only one, some part of me would resist. Sometimes it was a voice. Who do you think you are? Or maybe that was my mother's voice. So, sometimes it was a clenching in my chest or my gut. Sometimes it was just a feeling, a little like grief or sadness, that seemed to want to oppose what I was saying. I could get with God being infinite. I just couldn't get my head around God being one. I didn't realize yet that this resistance was my own entrenched belief that I was separate, because I didn't even know that I believed that. The shift began for me when I became mysteriously hooked by a passage in Ernest Holmes' Science of Mind, and I quote, "The infinite must be one, for there could not be two infinites. Whatever change takes place must take place within the one, but the one must be changeless, for being one and only, it cannot change into anything but itself." This passage stopped me in my tracks. There could not be two infinites? But aren't there an infinite number of stars in the sky, grains of sand, dimensions in space-time? Was Ernest really telling me that we must first get it into our heads that there is only one, not two? Not me and God or you and God, but just one? I chewed on this passage for months. How could infinite be one? And movies like The Secret weren't very helpful. For me, their analogy of the genie in the sky saying, "Your wish is my command," only supported this idea of God, or the all that is, as separate from myself. And then, in one Sunday talk, the minister said, "It's pure arrogance to think that you are the only thing separate from God, and thus the one and only person spiritual law won't work for." Talk about a cosmic slap across the face. And yet, my eyes were finally open. I felt the truth in her words. In that moment, I understood that in my world, the infinite didn't include me. That in my world, my beliefs in my unworthiness and my not good enoughness ran so deep that I could not possibly be a part of this magnificent all that is. This was not yet embodiment, but at last I knew that I held the belief that I was separate. And so I went to work on myself. But for me at that time, repeating, God is love, I am love, God is light, I am light, wasn't getting past my deep-seated gatekeeper belief of separateness, of unworthiness, of not enoughness. And I learned I wasn't alone. Through conversations with many other New Thought students, I discovered that infinite makes logical, intellectual sense to many of us. And sometimes we'd each had fleeting experiences of feeling it. And yet, we still harbored beliefs in lack and limitation that we'd lived with for so long that it was hard to even know when we were looking through them. Many of us struggle with the feeling, whether it's fully conscious or not, or whether it's been consciously articulated or not, of being separate from God. We still feel or subconsciously think of ourselves as outside of the infinite. And so I turned back to that passage of Ernest Holmes, now knowing that my work was to deeply understand what he was saying to me. The infinite must be one, because there cannot be two infinites. Self, I said to myself, you best figure this out, because everything else, he says, seems to rest on this. So I did a visual for myself. Self, I said again, just to make sure I was listening. Self, let's say that I hold one infinite in this hand and another infinite in this hand. And I imagine these as two huge beach balls. I briefly entertained the notion of bringing two beach balls actually here. And I thought I can just see myself dropping one and then, well, we know where that would go, so yeah. So imagine with me, if you will, see them expanding, 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 until nothing else exists but the two of them. And back then, when I was doing this for myself, as they expanded to fill everywhere, the two edges of my infinite beach balls touched each other. And poof, there was this mini explosion in my head as this shift in consciousness began to take place. Two infinites were impossible because each would limit the other. Wherever this infinite was, this infinite could not be. And wherever this infinite was, this infinite could not be. Each would limit the other, and that makes neither one infinite. Infinite, by definition, is limitless or ending, endless, boundless, never-ending, immeasurable, can't be limited. Therefore, nothing else can exist that would or could limit it. Therefore, infinite can be only one. But wait, there's more. Back to Ernest. And being one and only, it cannot change into anything but itself. And being one and only, it cannot change into anything but itself. Okay, self, I said to myself back then, this means whatever this infinite something creates can only be out of itself, because there isn't anything else to create out of but itself. So, the reason it permeates every particle in and of the universe is that it is every particle of the universe. And since it is every particle of the universe, it is every particle of me, because it cannot not be. And since it is all that has ever been, all that ever will be, and all that is not yet. And suddenly the light went on. That lovely double negative. I cannot not be of God. Oh, glory, I was trapped. There was no escape. I cannot not be of God. There was no room for my old belief in separation to argue with me. There was no escaping this ecstatic corner. There's only one. Therefore, I have to be of God. It cannot be any other way. God does not stop at our skin. God cannot stop at our skin. We know this intellectually. And yet, because our eyes show us a separate you from a separate me, it's easy to have that unconscious belief that we are separate. Even phrases like, I live and move and have my being in God, can quietly, sneakily conjure the image of us as being kind of like fish swimming in this sea of God. But the sea stops at our skin. It surrounds, but is not us. Even saying, I connect to God, implies that we can be disconnected from God. But how could we disconnect from that which we are. And A Course in Miracles tells us that our belief in separation is really the only problem there is. New Thought teaches us that God is right where you are, as you, because it cannot not be. We are not separate from it. We cannot be separate from the only thing there is. There is only God. There is only one God. God is infinite. And no, you can't be the only exception in all the universe, just like I couldn't be. If infinite exists, and we know that it does, then it has to be one. And that means you, I, we cannot be separate from it, no matter how hard we try. It is an impossibility. There is nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. There cannot be infinite and anything. Not infinite in me, not infinite in you. Just one. Oneness. And if God is everywhere, that also means there isn't just a teeny tiny little spark of God in you, because that would mean the rest of you, or me, isn't God. All of you, every particle, every molecule, every all God. Sorry. Why is getting this, knowing this deep in our bones, so important? One answer is because everything else that we teach in New Thought, in Unity, rises out of this deep knowing. Without the deep knowing that God is all there is, we don't get to the next obvious and logical and unavoidable step, our second principle. Therefore, I must be of God. God is, I am. We ourselves are works in consciousness. And going on, without this foundational deep in the marrow of our bones knowingness that we ourselves are one with this oneness, this allness, the efficacy of our prayer work falls short. Additionally, our belief that we are separate is what keeps us from our good. It's what keeps us from knowing our good. It's what keeps us from recognizing our good. Ernest Holmes and New Thought teacher Frederick Bales tell us, if our belief is limited, our demonstration will be limited. Elizabeth Sand Turner tells us that prayer must be substantiated by spiritual realization if we are to have the fulfillment of the promise. And it isn't just about prosperity. It's about peace and love, wisdom and harmony. It underpins how we see each other and how we treat each other. When we live from this consciousness of oneness, we are kinder, more compassionate. We see that we're all in this boat together because we cannot not be. When we embody this consciousness of oneness, when we know it in our bones that we cannot be separate from it, then we understand just as deeply that everything that is true of it is true of ourselves, for it cannot not be. We, at the very least, in our attempt to understand an infinitesimal fraction of the unknowable, can know this simple yet enormous truth. At this point in my spiritual growth, I believe that this is the crux of what we teach, and it's what we're here to practice. And just in case you're worried that stepping into this bone-deep knowing of God as infinite means that you will lose the intimate relationship you have with God, never fear. God being infinite means that God is also intensely intimate, because where you are, God has to be. God individuates as you. You can't get any closer than that. And lest I leave you with the idea that this is an overnight phenomenon, please let me dispel that right now. It's not, unless it is for some of us. For me, it's a continuous conversation with myself. This getting it, by its very nature, is experiential, and it takes practice and repetition. It takes time and practice for most of us to really get this in our bones. It's a long conversation. Again and again, I find myself turning back to what is my core principle. God is infinite. Therefore, I cannot not be of God. I return to this one thing I can know without doubt, without hesitation, and I begin again and again when I am working things through or when I am lost and troubled. This is my bedrock. Any thread I pull from me must come from this foundation of infinite oneness. Recently, I discovered a line from a poem by Saint-Saëns called Trust in the Heart. He says, the one is none other than the all none other than the one. Take your stand on this, and the rest will follow of its own accord. When I am solidly in that knowing of my oneness, it informs and guides what I do and say. This is where I go when life is thrilling and when life is down around my ankles. God is infinite. There is always only one. I am one with God because I cannot not be. So, for those of you who find that you too have a naysaying voice in your head, or doubts that spring up, or a feeling sometimes that this stuff doesn't work for me, or a feeling in your body that argues with you when you speak capital T truth to yourself, I offer you my backdoor nugget. You are one with the all that is, because you cannot not be. As is our practice, let's take a few moments for silent reflection. And so now, if you choose, please allow your eyes to gently close on this outer world that shows us a separate you from a separate me, and allow yourself to be gently breathed by the one life living us now. Know with me that the same power that keeps planets and suns and moons revolving in perfect balance throughout the cosmos is the same power that keeps electrons in perfect balance around their nucleus, is the same power that keeps our cells in perfect balance, is the same power that lifts the wind under a songbird's wings. The same love that permeates the universe is the same love that permeates us, because it cannot not be. The same harmony that is exhibited in all of the cycles of nature, and again in the harmonious nature of all the galaxies, is also active in us, because it cannot not be. Since the nature of the infinite is abundance, then abundance is our nature, because it cannot not be. The nature of the infinite is wisdom, and so then wisdom is part and parcel of our being, because it cannot not be. We are voices in the song of the universe. We are one with the unified field of all possibility. We are one with the beloved I am, and all that is true of it is true of us, because it cannot not be. And so it is. Amen.
Thanks again for joining us. Please visit unityandlynnwood.org for a preview of all upcoming classes, services, and events, and for an opportunity to make a gift to our community should you so choose. Thank you.